the hunger in the room to know more about Copilot.
Yeah.
It's actually good clues for what we should do for future sessions to drive deeper into it. And then you can understand why, like tonight, is about focusing on prompts, because it's such a big topic on its own, and it's a changing topic as we're looking at it and trying to understand how do you get value out of this AI thing. It's natural language, but how do we talk to it? I'll first of all preface this with saying I am a learner of Copilot just like you. In my day job, I'm a change manager. I create training, I talk to people, create communications, work alongside technical projects and try and drive change. Sometimes I use Copilot because other times I know exactly what I want to type and I don't need prompts and I don't need to go and use Copilot for various things. But there are definitely places and ways that I can use Copilot to save me time. So looking at a topic like this, even preparing for this topic tonight, was a good excuse for me to take a closer look again at how do we talk to this thing and what has changed since I last looked at it in a close way. As I said earlier too, I'm looking for throughout this small section opportunities for you to share what you've learned and know about prompting. And I know that's not easy too as we talk about it and shout it across the room, but I'm sure we can share some wisdom. Prompts are how we talk to AI. Even some of the things that we click and ask Copilot to do, want it to do, in the background, it's prompting, it's asking a service to do something. And as a change manager, again, my job is all about trying to help people adopt new technology, align it with what they do and how they work and try and get value out of that. And I must say, this is a new challenge. It's a new challenge. I framed it up when I was talking to someone out here earlier that we were talking about database SQL people who write, SQL query statements and the like. Some people are nodding, going, "Yeah, I know what you're talking about." Others are like, "What?" I'm in the kind of camp. I remember trying to learn this at uni and also talking to people who know about databases and the like. And they quickly can write out a little statement, say, "I want you to use this as a source. I want to query this table. I want you to add these results together. I want you to put it together in this statement and then use it for my application." And in some ways, prompting feels like that. And it's almost like people who know and think that way will find prompting easier. Another persona, if I can call it that find prompting easy to use. Who here is a manager of people, a people leader? One or two? Okay, who has a manager? Right. It's a two-sided question. All right, so I'll because we've got a mix, I'll ask the question twice. As a manager, how do you give people instructions? If you want them to do something, I'll ask the managers in the room. Anyone who's brave enough to share something. There was one or two, now all of a sudden your hands down.
Depends, if this is a continuation of something which we have already told them, then it would be different.
Yeah.
And when you're explaining them something for the first time, it will be different. But when you're explaining for the first time, you try to give them some context.
Yes.
And try to explain to them why it's important. Maybe towards the end, you'll tell them what is it that you want of it.
Yeah.
Speaking the context and then raising your demand.
Context is really important. Yeah. And I love how you said that for a topic or something that's brand new to someone, you really got to ground them. Here's that word again. We're going to hear that again later. Okay, here's a middle ground. We talked about managers and they have the ability to, well, I think you would be quite practiced in asking people to do things. And you've got a vision for what you want and how you want it. And the more that you explain it, the more likely they're going to get to the end result that you want. On the other side of it, there's the person receiving those instructions, but there's somewhere in the middle too. Who here has helped to train someone join their business? You've sat alongside them before. Really? Only one or two or three? Three? Yeah, okay. Yep. And I think that's a similar kind of thing, right? Some new person's joined the team and you're trying to give them some context about this is how we work, this is what we do, this is where you find this information. Here's our crazy set of teams and folders where you'll find all the, yeah. You always ask for excuses. All right, so on the other side of it, we've got the person who's receiving that information. They've been asked to do something, and it's maybe a difficult thing to process, especially if they're new. So you need context. You need, I guess, some patience. Do you have to have patience sometimes for someone? We do definitely when we're asking people who joined our team. It might take a little while, but we get them there, all right? So these are the sorts of things we have to think about with prompting. It's a conversation. It really is. And I know you've heard this said before, but I guess I'm trying to look for different ways to explain this so it can help us with our own need for prompting. Has anyone come across this picture before, or these concepts where a prompt is basically you're telling Copilot or any kind of AI, this is what I want. And you might let's say you might do the blue part quite frequently whenever you've used search and you go to Google and you say, give me this. What's the score on the latest rugby game? Find out the instructions for how to use something, and down comes some results with PDFs. But the more that we give to a prompt, the more likely we're going to get the result. And so we're going to see this pattern through some of the prompts that I've got to share and things that I'll ask as we go. So there's the goal. What kind of response do we want from Copilot? This is what we actually want. Context, like you said, if we don't give context, then we might get something that's quite wildly off the mark. The source, where should we go looking for it? So if we are giving instructions to people, then we're saying, this is where I want you to find that information. Another one we could swap for source is example. Here's some examples of what I'm looking for. Here's a document that I was, I want you to try and base your document off, or this presentation or this information. And then the expectation is, how do you want this to appear? In some ways, it's like, what format do I want this to be in? Is another way of looking at that too. It's also about tone. It's also about all kinds of things. How do I want this end result to look and feel and sound and all that? All right, so I've grounded you on it. I've set the context. What did I put next? Okay, so we're going to work through a couple of the prompts. Here's an example, and it's a very short one. Write a summary based on all emails from Sam in the past 2 weeks. What sort of result do you think I'd get out of that? Who's Sam? Sam, someone I work with? Sam, someone that I've had communications with in email or chat? I don't know.
Someone else.
Sam? One else? Sorry. Oh, someone else. Very good. Yep. Yeah, and over the last 2 weeks, what are those 2 weeks? We're giving it a time frame, but maybe it's quite small. So that's just one small prompt. We've got the goal, and then the source, where we're looking for that information from. But here's something that's a fuller kind of prompt. I've put a lot more information in there because I want to get a more accurate result. And so we've got a goal, draft an outline of a training manual about time management. Maybe that's sometimes, the first time you tried Copilot, maybe that was the first sort of thing that you asked. Oh, write me a blog post about this. And so Copilot goes off, finds some stuff about time management, says, here you go, gives you some sources. And you're like, oh, that's okay, but I'll refine it. So what's the context? Our audience are professionals. They work in a hybrid environment, constantly need virtual meetings and attend virtual meetings and meet deadlines. So that context is going to help as Copilot tries to find information about time management and looks at that and thinks, okay, well, this is what I'm going to emphasize in my response. What's the tone? Document needs to be friendly and suggestive to try and help people to pick up on the tips around time management. Can you see the difference? Hopefully, because I've carefully selected the colors, although I really shouldn't have picked the peach. And I did that because I was, this is me. I picked up on this color here. So I blame whoever created that graphic. All right. So that's our structure. Now it's your turn. Your turn. And feel free to do this on your machines as you have a go. We're going to try this for a couple of minutes. Write a prompt that creates an article about the Tesla Cybertruck. Apologies for anyone who's anti-Tesla, anti-Cybertrucks or whatever. Yeah, I won't share my opinions about it, but there's the prompt. There's what I'm asking you. Write a prompt that creates an article about the Tesla Cybertruck. Yes.
Does order matter? Do you put a go first? I'll put a go last. I'll put a context first. Does that matter?
Great question. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else got questions? I saw a lot of people put their heads down and you're going to start typing. What were you going to start with? You're going to what? Sorry. The goal. Okay. So you were just going to, we're literally going to write me an article about the Cybertruck?
Because there's no context of like 30 words, 300 words.
Could be length. Yeah. What audience? Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Prompt do you want? Do you want an article? Do you want a summary?
Well, I've got an article, but yeah, good question. Good line of thinking.
The article will be published.
Where will the article be published? Yeah. So who's my audience, I guess? Yeah. Anything else?
Often start saying you are an engineering expert.
Yeah.
Persona, yeah.
Yeah, persona, and that's right. That sort of that grounding and expectation, and a bit more about that audience.
What sort of tone you would like, a professional or like tone? What sort of tone you're looking?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So already, and when I created this exercise, I was thinking, I wonder how long it's going to take for people that start typing and look up and go, but Daryl. But Daryl, all you've asked is for an article about the Cybertruck. What do you want to know? And what do you want to know? What's the purpose of the article? We've talked about some of these things. Are there any examples of what you'd like for me to come back with? What are the sources of information? Are we comparing electrical vehicles? Comparing the Cybertruck to the Ford F-150 and so this is the point. And so my answer was going to be, hey, if I gave you all of that on that previous slide, if I listed that and said, write a prompt that da 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 da, would I be asking you to write the prompt, or have I already written the prompt? Which is that? I've already written the prompt. Yeah. If I give you all of those instructions, I've already prompted you. So that's the sort of thinking we need to go through. It's not anymore we are asking Google or Bing or whoever to come back with, give me this information, and then you scan it and then you start thinking and digging deeper. It's now, what else do I want to know? And I know that the messaging around Copilot is it's going to help us save time because it helps us speed up the way that we work, helps us find information better, gets us off to a better start. But what do we need to do before we speed up? We actually have to slow down and think about what we want. Prompting. Who would have thought it would be such an exciting topic? So maybe I fine-tuned that prompt and I said, well, create me an interesting article. All right, but you got the point. We need to do more than just ask the question. We've got other things to give us a better chance at getting the response we want. Okay, so next question was, when I said, let's write a prompt, what do you all have open right now for your place of prompting? Copilot.microsoft.com. Anyone else using that too? Raise your hands. Yep. Anyone else using something else? Yep. What were you using? ChatGPT. Yep. Anyone in PowerPoint all ready to create a PowerPoint slide deck for me? Yep. No? You were? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Using the mobile app? Or
Tablet.
the app on the tablet? Yep. Okay.
Anyone in Teams?
Teams.
Okay.
Will the response be different depending on where?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to get into. Also, when we think about using copilot.microsoft.com, we've got choices there too, haven't we? So we'll have a look at those too. Prompts, the prompt features that we might want to use, even the sources of information, it's not all the same. It's not all available across all the places that we can use Copilot. We know this. We even talked about that today with the news around Excel. And we know too that when we go into an app, it's going to have special powers in that context to be able to do more things. Excel, formulas, tables, reasoning, data, PowerPoint's a bit more creative. I've actually found the PowerPoint Copilot to be a little slower because sometimes when you ask for it to create a presentation, it's not just going, here you go, here's some slides, but it's sources of information, break it down into headings, summarize that into tables and various things, find some reasonable formatting to start with. That's why it takes a bit longer. All right, so here is one example. I am in Copilot for Microsoft 365 and it has switched over to the work switch. And you might actually see, yeah, there it is. In the prompt there, it actually says use the / or add something here. There are hints in that very box. Ask me anything or type a / to add people, files, or more. And I can do that within copilot.microsoft.com, and I've switched myself over to the work experience. I can choose a person. So I've done Laura, and I'm asking some questions about her and what she's working on. Now, when I try to use, which one is this one? I think this is, yeah, right. So instead of going to copilot.microsoft.com, I've gone to Microsoft365.com, the landing page for my web apps. Some of us go there. Maybe we use Outlook.com. Maybe we go there to see some of the recent documents that we're working on. Copilot's there. It's now an app on the app rail. It has the same hint. Use the / In fact, even when you hit some of these starter prompts, use the / It's not ready yet in all places that we need it to. All right, so this is something that as early adopters, even when we're thinking about how we're crafting our prompts and what we can use, it's not quite ready yet in some places. But when you do use it in a place like copilot.microsoft.com and use that / I'm already providing more context. I want to know about this person. I want to know about this file. I want to know about this meeting. So all of those choices help me to get a better result. So running through one of those prompts, this was a prompt about using that same training manual about time management. I'm in work mode. I've got my goal, my context, my expectations, and that was an interesting kind of outline. Let's just go back again and start that. It's almost like it's writing chapters for a book, bullet points, and it's, coming up with various things. So running through that, we've got, about 8, 9 chapters, 3 points each. I don't know how Copilot arrives at giving me 3 points for each chapter. I want more. And it's got some references as well. In fact, one of the references is this slide deck, because I was writing these prompts trying to create the slide deck at the same time, and it saw the words and it's like, oh, you're mentioning it here. So good reference.
1 of 30 responses means.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Are you all familiar with this response count? That when you are using Copilot, I've created one prompt, Copilot's come back and it's given me a response, and I can continue that conversation now. So just like a manager who says, great first try, here's what else I want you to do to refine those results. you know? So this is all about remembering the context of this conversation back and forth. And so you have up to about 30 responses there. Yes.
Say, you pick. Does Copilot remember what you pick and what can you tell Copilot? I think this one's the best. Could we go with that tone of your own?
You can actually go back and have a look at what you've prompted historically. So it is just a feed. And it's over to you whether you want to go back and say, I like that one better. I think generally when you're having the ongoing conversation, you're trying to refine it. Or as we'll see a bit later on, it's also about what information is it coming back that then prompts me to ask more. Yes, your question.
You provide with a personality, you know which department you're in.
Yeah, sort of.
Can you go a slightly more aggressive personality? And if you're in HR, could you go a little more friendly?
I know. I like your examples. More aggressive or kinder, you know, more chill. I'll answer it thinking in a different way. The personas that we give are a bit like the context and the grounding that we can give. So I could say something like, I am someone in HR, and this is what I want to know, and this is what I want you to create. Say it again.
Prompt.
Yeah, it's in the prompt. That's right. Yeah, and I think this is, you know, features that we're thinking of with other prompting engines that you can go in and say, I think it's ChatGPT, isn't it? You can say that this is me, this is what I would normally be interested in, and it helps to ground it as a basis. Cool.
If you're making your own custom copilots as well, then you can
Right.
system message to give it its own personality.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to make a really grumpy copilot all the time, then you can create one of those. But the M365 Copilot out of the box is fairly neutral.
It's preferred pronouns. It comes back with they, them.
Really, I haven't tried.
Oh, wow.
Tell it what your name is and stop the user and actually use it.
It technically knows your name already, right?
That's good.
Because you're signed in using it, yeah.
I did that search on Teams and it came up with my name. I have to mention that it automatically came with my name and
Yeah.
some history on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a prompt to say like, where have I been mentioned? You know, in this
Yep.
or whatever, and it knows your name, so it looks where you've been mentioned.
Yeah.
As Nick's mentioning, the system prompt, some grounding information is injected into the system prompt, such as the time, current time,
Mm-hmm.
time, who are you as a user?
Yep.
So you don't need to go look that up in the graph because it's a foundational piece
Yes.
of memory, and those memories will be added to it.
Yeah, that's true. Even the fact of where you're asking and what Copilot's prompting you with to say, hey, you might want to use this to find out about the meeting you just attended or the chat that you're trying to catch up with. So yeah, same example, same query, and I've just run it through Copilot on the web, so not looking explicitly at work. And it's just interesting to see, one, it's slightly different format, not that that really matters, but it comes back with generally the same kinds of points and outline for this course about time management. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Different research together. If you do like a large piece of research, can you link them together? Like in the past, I looked at this. Can you my query, for example?
I haven't tried that in between sessions, but you know that 30 count, that's a one way of linking or chaining the queries.
You reach that 30 and you try to let's try a new prompt. And then
can I tap into that previous?
The previous one?
I'm not sure. I don't think we've tried that before.
No, I think you'd have to copy and paste what was relevant, because what the reason for that limit of 30 is because this prompt is being built up over time that's being sent to the model, and eventually we will reach what was called the token limit of the model. And so we have a whole lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't go into too much detail about that, but yeah, you could essentially say, well, let's summarize that conversation of those 30 things that I've already had.
Yeah.
Take that summary, paste it into another chat and say, hey, I've had a previous conversation about this stuff and we deduced this. I want to continue.
Other AI bots, call it that way, does that a little bit
Okay.
to a degree, not to like have everything up in the past 30 days, for example, and combine them.
Mm. Yeah, it might be that it's a little ahead in how a good way of finishing off a conversation. So again, as a manager, like, yep, great, we've got the great result that we're after. You've had to talk back and forth with prompts to get to that point. But as a way of almost like how could we do this better? Our last prompt could be, right, so can you help me write a better prompt that's going to get me to the end result? And then you can use that again in a fresh query. So that's another way of doing that. I have friends that are completely nutty about Copilot, spend all day in there, and so I learn from them as well. And that's one of the things I learned from them.
What things can you not?
Whew.
Besides the sensitive information type thing.
Yeah. No.
The guardrails, I think is.
There's offensive and dangerous things that are kind of obvious, crude, rude stuff. But I did see a funny one, and it wasn't Copilot, but let's all have a laugh at this. Thank you. Oh, on cue. No, someone was asking for a recipe it was Alistair, about make a meatball, and it was about mince in a meatball. And the AI came back and said, I'm sorry, I can't give you a response to this because meat is high in fat and cholesterol and it can kill you. I'm like, how did you jump from that, as if it was like he was asking for, show me how to make a Glock 9 out of a 3D printer. It wasn't, but anyway.
I actually use Copilot to make bedtime stories for my kids.
Right.
Like, they love it. I've got like a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And like silly young boys, they try and push the boundaries sometimes. And they say, oh, make me a story about poo or something, And Copilot actually gets to the point where it says, I'm not going to do this. And I don't think this is a valuable use of my time. It kind of drops the conversation there.
Wow.
So it's like the guardrail is actually quite impressive.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do one on the Cybertruck and asked it word fugly.
Fugly.
Wouldn't let me.
It must be in the dictionary somewhere. That's friggin' ugly. If none of you understand the melding of those two words.
Satirical text policy article.
It won't. Okay, that's good. Troy has been denied the instructions for how to print a Glock 9 pistol.
Might be time to move on to a new topic.
Very good.
Nice.
I tried to get it to write a satirical tax policy article.
Say it again, sorry?
Tried to get it to write a satirical tax policy article, and it just
Well,
halfway through it said I'm not allowed to write satire about tax.
or maybe just that it's just really difficult to do. One more, yes.
You can get around that stuff. For instance, you ask it to give you steps to make a fake file. They had a dream I had where I made the fake passport.
Yeah. It's interesting, hey, so you've set the grounding and that the dream means that it's not real, so maybe that becomes safe. So Alistair could dream about making his meatball out of the heaps of mince.
I would add that's all comes under the term jailbreaking, and we typically red team for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
There is a really interesting.
So you're thanking him for the suggestion?
No, we actually have built a lot of those guardrails built in around, hey, don't allow, you cannot pretend to, but there is what we call the onion effect, where you're effectively going through and opening up the skin of the onion. But I highly recommend there's a tool available called Gandalf, which is a demonstration tool where you've got to jailbreak Gandalf as a Copilot, as essentially an AI, an LLM-based AI. But it teaches you that exactly one of those techniques, one of the levels you have to get past is convince Gandalf to release his password. Oh. But what we do, what Microsoft spends a lot of time doing is putting these guardrails into them outside the model, because we can't change the models. We put them in outside to make sure that, number one, the 5 responsible AI principles that we have, the pillars of responsible AI, are adhered to. Things like you're not allowed to pretend to not be an AI, because one of the principles is transparency, and that telling the AI, hey, pretend that you're not an AI, is actually contravenes that principle. So those are baked in, but then there are all these, the guardrails to prevent against the onion attacks, those sorts of things. So yeah, have fun with Gandalf. It's a great tool to learn about how we do these, how this sort of
They missed a trick there, and they could have called it Shrek, because he's all about layers and ogres. Right. Yeah. So my next point about these prompts is so I've come out with this prompt. I've got these results, and it is about a conversation. What else could we say to learn or to write that article or write that course on task management? Add another 4 bullet points to each of those chapters. I tried this. Provide examples for each chapter. So rather than just giving me bullet points, but give me some examples of time management. How do I deal with time zone differences in the hybrid work environment? These sort of follow-on questions. And have any of you used some of those when they are suggested at the end of a prompt? Sometimes you see them in grey and they say, do you want to know a bit more about this topic? Have you used them? And were they useful?
So I just actually got it from my boss. It was quite a lengthy one. I used that saying, what was that email about? Or what was the latest email? So it gave me a summary. Then the other option it gave was, it had 3 phases. So it shortlisted it, and the options are tell me about phase 1, what are the objectives of phase 2, and the difference between the 3 phases or something like that.
Right.
So it did keep up.
So in that way, Copilot gave him a summary of this really long email, which was beautifully crafted, I'm sure. It had phases, so it must be an amazing email. But then it allowed you to sort of focus in on each phase and give you some analysis and insights into it. Yeah. So those follow-on questions are important. So this is context was that prompt from off the screen. My follow-on prompt is I want to do some research on each point. You've given me these points, but I want to do some research. So provide me some references for each of those chapters and bullet points. Format them in a table, listing the chapter and the column 1, the bullet points. I'm playing with columns here because I'm like, I wonder if I can do it in tables. Bullet point text in column 2, links. And I wonder if we can, did I do a result here? No, let's actually try this. Let's try this. Because, sorry, I'll jump out of here and try and run this prompt, actual prompt, because I want to see what results it comes up with today. Here we go. Now, I asked that question before. Where should I prompt? Should I use copilot.microsoft.com? I would actually recommend that as your starting point if you want the fullest, richest, most capable generalist Copilot experience, right? Whereas if you go into places like this at the moment, Copilot for Microsoft 365, some of the features are still catching up. It's definitely still useful, but maybe it will hurt your brain less if you get into the habit of using one main place to start, and then as the rest of the products start to pick up, you'll have more confidence in what it can do consistently across the products. Another place for that, of course, is same Copilot over here in M365. All right, so back over to here. Let's use the web. Let's be equal. I find it interesting too that I copy the text and somehow it picks up on an image and drops it in. So I'll remove that. Same prompt. Let's remove that from there. Do any of you have some favorite prompts you actually do find useful and reuse? Or are you crafting them all the time, every time? I think, Nick, you've got one, and I show his example a bit later on, which is your catch-up prompt. Yeah, and do you have that stored somewhere?
Yeah, totally. I use OneNote. I haven't got around to properly yet, but in my OneNote, I've got a list of prompts that I use often.
Yeah.
It just saves you having to type these really extensive, like multi-line prompts. And yeah, like we get tons of email on Microsoft, and it's very easy for me to like skip over emails or think I've replied to something but I haven't or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've got this prompt that basically just looks through my recent emails, chats in Teams, anywhere where I've been mentioned in Teams channels or whatever, gets all that together, and then puts it into a table to say like what the topic is, where it found it, whether it's an email or whether it's a chat or IM or whatever. What the topic was about, what's the expectation of me, and kind of what the next step is. And just built that all into one table. So like beginning of every day, I could just run that, read through it, and see what I've missed over the past few days. Make sure I prioritize things.
Yeah, so I have that on a slide a bit later on for people to have a look at. It's quite a cool prompt.
Isn't that why you'd use Notebook?
Well, actually, no, I looked at Notebook today thinking, what is that? And I won't change over because it might lose my results. I don't know, but we'll have a look at it shortly. I'm going through this practically. So rather than just showing you slides, I've run the same prompt. It might have a few differences in here. In fact, I find it interesting that it hasn't given me 3 results, 3 bullet points this time. This time around, it's gone, here's the chapter, here's like a topic inside that chapter, and here's something that you might want to cover. So isn't that interesting? I didn't change anything in the way that prompt was. I just ran the same thing, and it's come back with a slightly different result.
Hey, Carol, could you zoom in a little bit?
Sure.
Oh, perfect. Like
How about this, old man?
that. Not that bad.
Sorry.
Not a sale.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how about this classic man? Right. So let's drop in that follow-on prompt. This is an ongoing conversation. Nice try, Copilot, but I do want a bit more detail. I want you. I'm grounding it. I'm trying to give it the context of. I'm trying to do some research here. I want a bit more information than what you've just given me. In fact, you've shortchanged me this time. You've only given me 1 prompt, or rather 1 bullet point per thing.
How does
So
it know you're continuing the conversation versus you want to have something new?
well, thank you, David. It's like you're prompting me to illustrate these points. No, it is good. It's fair. It's fair. So because I'm asking another prompt. In fact, let's just go back and remove all of that again. Okay, right. So this, if I scroll down a bit further, somewhere down here, it's going to say, oh, thought it would have said response 1 of 30, but yeah, I think work will actually have that counter, whereas this one will eventually tell me. Yeah. So here's the follow-on prompt or the follow-on question. Let's see what it comes back with. I did find it interesting, the kind of table it made and drew and came up with. But yeah, so it is an ongoing conversation. It's about refining things, and I think that is the natural way that will help us get into that habit of getting the results that we want. Be the manager, be the person who's given instructions to the person who's just joined your team, or the child that you're talking to in your household if you've got children. Or in my case, another example, sometimes I've had to work with people overseas that are part of my team that might be working on a video or graphics or something like that. If I don't describe to them what I want with reasonable context and guidance, I have to wait a whole day before I see their results, and they go, yeah, nice try, but you know what I mean? So if we do slow down and put the effort a bit more into our prompts, we can come back with stuff. So what does this come up with? Wowzers. Not really what I'm after. But I know that the last time I ran this, it came back with a table, and it sort of had a go at what I was trying to get, but it didn't quite get there. Right, so those are a couple of prompts. Let's get. Yeah, it kind of did, didn't it? Didn't look like it was going on from what I wanted. Right. Let's change tack a little bit. One of the challenges with using Copilot, especially if you're brand new to it, is it's like this blank slate. It's like walking into a workshop and your vendor or someone saying, right, we're here to help you. What do you want? You know, it's like this blank slate. You don't know where to start. And the good thing about the Copilot ecosystem, if I can call it that, is that there are lots of little different starter points. And what's happening over time is that those prompts for your prompting, it's prompting you to say, hey, I suggest you use this as a starting point. They're actually making more and more sense based on where you are working and what you're trying to do. this one, I think Troy showed us earlier where, you can hover over and click the view prompts and it gives you that example. This gives you it's a window into some suggestions from a place called Copilot Lab, or a site called Copilot Lab. Did anyone use that at all in your early journeys with learning Copilot? It is a good collection of good starting points for different scenarios, different people, maybe different apps. It also introduces you into some of the wide themes of how Copilot can work. It can create, it can summarize, it can give you insights. And so this is a good way to get a starting point when you are trying to do some work and you've got a question. Yes?
Since I saw that Microsoft added that you'll be able to save your own prompts to that soon.
Yeah. Your own personal library in a sense, hey? Yeah. That's what I thought the notebook was going to be. Let's go back to, that was David's question. Say it again, this US summer.
Security Copilot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As a way of almost saying, here's a prompt that we've found useful for the HR team. And it has context in terms of how we might work in our organization. So let's save it here in our organizational prompt library. Bing. And it will work well. So back to that thing about the notebook. Oh, not really shown on screen. That's what I thought that little notebook was as part of the Copilot experience, as a place to store your prompts, but it is not. Right, so where is this presentation? There it is. There you go. Okay, cool. Copilot Lab, yep, good place to get some inspiration, but also, use them as a way of seeing how prompts actually structured. Here's some good examples of what I might use to write my own prompts. And then also looking at the different sources that it suggests too, like if you are asking about a person or a particular file or a meeting. One example, and this starts to lean into what Nick was talking about in terms of catching up. It is a good one to introduce to people in your organization because we all need to catch up. We're all running from meeting to meeting and we take time off hopefully and we need to catch up afterwards. So my demo user Laura in my environment, I work with her and we chat, we talk in chat, we share files, we work in Loop workspaces. I've been on leave and I want to know, what she's been up to. And so I say, what's the latest from Laura Galloway, organized by emails, chats, and files? Again, goal, what's my expectation? What do I want out of that? So the response that I got was interesting. I probably should find a way of pausing that. No, that's not going to help. I won't ask you to zoom in and take a look, although that's a good way of doing it. Maybe you change to zoom on your camera phone back there. But it has made a section about, well, here's an email that she sent to you yesterday before you came back to work about drone specs. Here's some chats that we've had over the last, going back to, see, I use this demo user occasionally, so it goes back as far as the 12th of July. But the cool thing about it is that, each of those are reference points. I can jump directly back to where that conversation is and I can pick up on all that context. And so a prompt like that is really useful, especially if I haven't worked with Laura for a little while. Hey, Laura, haven't seen you for ages. We've been on 2 different projects for a good 6 months. So I can run something like that and try and pick up on what were we doing together, 6 months ago. Because this is shared between her and I. I'm not going to see anything I don't have access to. And it's often going to pick up and suggest things that we have worked on in common to start with, especially when it's across chats, emails, meetings, and things that we have. But yeah, the interesting thing, it gives 8 references. So it breaks it down. It's here's a chat here. And what I like about the results, that's quite something. It's almost trying to fit the whole conversation in the reference. But it also references some of those documents, gives me a little example of what was in that document, and I can click through and see the whole thing. So I'm catching up with her. My follow-up prompt will be based on Copilot's first response. What has Laura been up to lately since I've haven't worked with her for 6 months? Oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about that. So maybe my next prompt is, what is customer Y? What is the response she gave to customer Y when we were asking about things? So I did. That was my follow-up prompt, this ongoing conversation. Summarize the file that Laura had mentioned in the title, responding to customer Y. I didn't know what Copilot was going to tell me the first time round, so I had to ask a follow-up prompt. And then based on that, I wanted a response. My follow-up prompt will be based on the Copilot's first response. So it came back and told me, have a look at this loop file, and just again, an encouragement to keep looking at these results and checking things out. Copilot said Laura was mentioned in this loop file, and it was last modified on August 18th, 2022. Well, loop didn't necessarily exist in this form in 2022, but it's actually picked up on the date in the page for a task, and it's saying that that's when the document was last modified. So again, take a closer look. Copilot will save you time, but you have to slow down to give it the right prompt, and you do have to slow down and take a quick look at those results and don't just take them at face value.
Like a reporter, confirm your sources.
Confirm your sources, or you could be embarrassed. I've got a few more points to make. Have you heard this concept before when we think about prompting? This is multi-shot. Find some research on reducing stress through meditation from Harvard Health Publishing, American Psychological Association. There's my first prompt. It comes back, gives me some results. Oh, and tell me more about that mindfulness-based therapy. I want to know a bit more about that. So what are some of the techniques that are commonly used? That's my second shot, based on what comes back in the first one. And my third one, use those responses so far and draft a blog post outlining some of the benefits of meditation. That's multi-shot. That's how most of us, I think, interact with Copilot. And then there's who here calls themselves a prompt engineer? I guess I set you up, right? I set you up. You're not going to answer me now. A couple of my friends call themselves prompt engineers, meaning that they slow right down. They've learned a lot through experimenting with Copilot, trying different prompts out, trying to get the best results in one shot, almost like going for that hole-in-one. So that's what that single shot is. How can I combine a prompt with all of that so that I can get the result that I'm after in one hit? And I think that's what we can get to as we're working through our own learning about prompting and how we might help our organizations and our team members. If we get to a point where we find a prompt that's going to be useful and reusable, and we might save it to that not notebook thing, organizational library, then that's what that's all about. Giving people a really good starting point, a meaningful one. Order matters. You could, at the moment, I've got context at the start. Meditation this is what it is. Given this, I want you to draft a blog post, outline the benefits, and use those sources. So that order matters. If I change the order a bit, I don't want to give you any trauma here, but does anyone remember in math how, you got to do the thing in brackets first and then it's on the outside and the outside? Sorry about that if that was traumatic, but it's a bit like this too. It is going to try and deal with, I believe it's the last bit of the prompt first, but it does look at the grounding. I'm still trying to work that out. Like I said, I'm still learning. The order does matter. Yes.
I read somewhere says AI is not very good at multitasking. So it sounds like it's a multitasking to put all the prompts in one shot.
Yeah.
Multitasking or
No, you're right. So we saw multi-shot, and this feels like it's still about a multitasking thing. And it's like when you're talking to a teenager or a kid, and they remember the last thing, and they go and race off and they do that, and they go, yeah, but you didn't remember this.
Recency bias. Yeah, so there is a concept of recency bias with the prompts.
Right.
Often the center of the prompt is paid less attention to rather than the beginning and the end. So we often say the most important things, most critical things at the beginning or the end of the prompt, the stuff in the middle. But mind you, the newer models, GPT-4 Turbo, are being trained to eliminate some of this recency bias. So they're pretty good, but you do, as Daryl said, you start with the most important. Don't put your hand on the stove, children, and then finish with the most, repeat action. There's no harm in repeating the main instruction. What is the goal? Put it at the beginning and then put it back at the end and repeat. Say,
So would you start with the goal?
You often, there's some guidance that the first thing you should do is this is the goal, but that comes in as part of the context.
Right. So you could say goal, and then you go, here's the context for that goal. Here's some examples, and here's where you should find that information.
You would also, and there's no harm in putting bullet points, using bullet points rather than a block of text. And actually, here's my guiding principles I want you to follow. I want you to give me only information from heart, and use structuring it, like structuring your prompt as a document, or less a document, but more of something that's readable to humans, using headings. Hashes are a good way of indicating a heading or an important block of text.
It's probably good that Copilot isn't like a child, because the example that you gave, don't touch that stove, what does a child do? Well, I don't know what kind of bias that's called, but you've already created the picture of, you've said no, but I'm going to try that out anyway. So hopefully Copilot's not like that. But this is, in a sense, this is grounding that context of this is the context of what I'm looking for, and I'm pushing through to get those results. Now, time for what Daniel says. I don't know where I found that picture. A little older. Daniel has some tips for prompting. Examples. Yeah, use examples. Here's an example of what I want you to consider. So good. Chain of thought. I think we talked a little about that in some places you can literally chain an old query and its results. But even within that conversation, you can chain things together.
But without calling myself a prompt engineer, which I definitely don't want to do now, one of the techniques the large language models are not traditionally very good at logical thinking or reasoning. They're very good at simulating language and explaining things. But if you ask them a logic problem, so Daryl's on a bus traveling for 50 kilometers an hour and he's got 6 apples with him and he drops 3 out the window, how many will he have after 6 minutes? Model will not do a good job of that. Now, of course, don't ask an LLM to do that. But if you actually add that line at the end, provide the answer by breaking the problem down and explaining it step by step, the models will actually perform fantastically better and actually give you the right answer. Now, this is what we would call, it is a fundamental prompt engineering technique. It's called chain of thought. So yeah, that's a really good way of doing it. There's another way as well, and that is actually saying, I think you can do better.
I think you can do better.
It is.
I heard it works with politicians as well.
I think you can. I'm not
so disappointed in you.
Disappointed.
Oh.
That will actually improve the output of the model.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing a single shot where you don't have an opportunity.
Yeah. Use Copilot to build a comparison table. Give me a table to compare. So that you're giving it a format. Yeah. And tables are quite popular, aren't they, in results? As a way.
Compare A and B. Someone says, should I do A or B? And they're both on websites, and you need to, a lot of times I used to go look it up on website A, look it up on B, and then copy and paste some stuff onto an Excel spreadsheet. And go, those are different. I just do that, and now it does. Yeah. It looks both up for me, assembles it into a table, and I can go, actually, that's, especially if I'm buying shoes or something,
Oh. So Nick bounced off Daniel's discussion about format, and so he had some advice around, giving me a table and formatting it in a certain way. So here's one about summarizing my emails. Here's the progression. Summarize my emails, team messages, channel messages for the last workday. Cool, got that. List the actions in a dedicated column. All right. So here's the message. Here's what they wanted you to do. Suggest follow-ups. That's dangerous. In a dedicated column as well. Right. So you're creating those 3 columns. Table should look like this. So he's getting really specific now. This is how I want these columns, and maybe even in this order. And then if I've been directly mentioned, then bold that topic. That's cool. So yeah, keep these things in mind as you're writing your prompts too. This is getting into the engineering territory. And I didn't mean to say that it's a bad thing. All I meant was that some people are brilliant, and they do spend that time to almost learn how to talk and program Copilot with the language that they give it. But this is a good one.
You absolutely want repeatability of that stuff.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to make that up from scratch every day.
No.
It'd take too long to think
Yeah.
about it, right? So you need those go-to prompts that work for you.
Repeat.
Yeah. Build that collection of them, look in Copilot Lab,
Launch at 6 a.m. and deliver it to me in email. Cool. Where do you keep your prompts? Say it again.
The screenshot of the output index.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just, yeah. Maybe you don't want to know. We might feature in it, right? Daryl nagged me about this.
When you run that, it blows you away.
Yeah. I've seen one. Did you see Phil run that one today, where he did the comparison between remote support within Intune versus TeamViewer?
Oh, yeah.
Really interesting, because it did a monthly for the Microsoft remote tool, either annually.
Right.
So obviously one looked really good. Bias in it.
I think I did try to run that one. I can't remember.
Is there a plugin for OneNote?
A Copilot plugin for OneNote?
Yeah.
Copilot's in OneNote yet.
Copilot for OneNote exists.
Coming?
Yeah, you can't reference OneNote, I think, from Teams.
Yeah.
From Teams, you can't specifically OneNote content.
Some of the early Copilot experiences start off with your context is you're in my app and you're looking at this email, or Loop example, you're in this workspace. I'm only going to give you information from there. I think that's where OneNote is starting. And as more capabilities come, you'll be able to ask some of those questions from outside of the notebook and about your organization. I thought I had one of these things prepared, but it's not quite there. I did run that same prompt that Nick gave, and it did come out with this interesting looking table as well for my own results. And it wasn't too risky, so I was going to share it, but we don't have time to keep going. Yeah, so where are you storing your prompts? OneNote, I think you said you use OneNote. Anyone using Notepad? Notepad plus. Copilot history, maybe you go back and go, oh, that one worked quite well, and I use it frequently enough to go back in the history and run it again. In a chat with yourself. GitHub, you've got your own repository.
I do.
Whoa. Well, how about this? I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less, right? Copilot, prompts within Loop, right? What is this? This is a code block. I can copy that and I can go launch it somewhere. Or I think I can almost do this. Copilot draft page content, paste in, boom, and it'll come back and yeah.
A stupid question, but they're stupid question.
I just installed it. I had no idea what Loop was.
His videos of
I'll talk later. No, whole another session.
If you use the clipboard in Windows, and you have the clipboard set to
Oh yeah.
you do your prompt and you pin it, it stays in the clipboard history. So it's quite a quick way of getting, you just Control V, Windows V, and your pin stuff will be there. So it's sometimes a couple of 581 for it. to open up.
I remembered what I was going to do. I've copied Nick's wonderful prompt. I was going to go, look at this. I can copy the code. I can go over here and I can run that, and I'll make sure that I'm in work. And then I'll run this. And hopefully nothing dodgy's arrived in my mailbox since I tried this last time. We'll leave that there for a bit. But yeah, it runs through. Now, just one other plug for Loop. And again, I'll help my friends who want to know more about it. But if I found this useful and I'm sharing this workspace with people in my team and they want to reuse those prompts, one other thing I can do is turn that into a component. Again, this might be new to some of you. I can then email this to Laura. Come on, Laura. LOR. And I can share that. Whoops. Oh. What happened there? I meant to do this. Copy component. Oh no, really?
It's like OneNote on steroids. Pretty much.
Yeah. Think of it like if you've ever wanted to share just a piece of a page of OneNote or just a piece of a document and yet
interactive with her, you share it.
Yeah. So when I send this to Laura, she's going to see that live component. She might even want to refine it or say, yeah, I'm going to change that prompt as well.
Like it's like a Word document that you share with each other.
It is actually just another Office document, but it is something that you can slice up that you can't do with Word. You've got to share the whole document, whereas this is like you can take pieces of it and get people to contribute. So that's one way to do it too. Right, so we are pretty much almost at time. What was my last? Huh? Oh, you're interested, aren't you? Okay, what did it come back with? Next special. Hey, it was an overdue invoice. You really want to know about that? That's to my client, okay? I pay my invoices. But this bold one here, right? So Peter mentioned me, and we are rescheduling a catch-up. Mail. So most of that's mail, but if I had more chats going on in Teams or in channels, then it would be there. And look, all the references, I can jump back and see that. So that's quite a cool one, Nick. I'm going to keep that and use it. Yeah. So finally, I didn't write the summary for this slide deck. I thought, here's an opportunity. Yeah, let's see how Copilot does. All right. I didn't have to do much. I just went to here. I ran summarize this presentation, which I didn't even have to write the prompt. I just clicked it. It came back with some main ideas, and that's what is in this last slide. So we had a presentation that had some Copilot updates. Thank you, Troy. We went through some prompting tips. We talked a little bit about prompt storage. Maybe it could do a better job in terms of summarizing what the slides were about, but I think it's an okay job. Thank you all for coming along. I know it could have been a bit more interactive. I should have planned a bit more in terms of different activities. But I think, it's important for us at user groups like this to try and share what we know, because I'm definitely not an expert. I spend a bit of time here and there in Copilot. I'm learning, you're learning, but we can all learn together about what works. And thank you for your insights too, fellas. And for everyone, and yours too about the latest that's coming up with being able to save those prompts. These sorts of things we can't keep up with it because we've only got 2 eyeballs and so much time. So this is what user groups are about too. But thank you. Yes, David. Policies.
Policies that you can give to your work Copilot within your admin.
You mean like restricting it to doing certain things?
So you mentioned guardrails.
Right. I might save that one for another time. Yeah, like maybe around the security topics and things that we might get into. Yes. Yeah, I think it's also kind of almost functional, like we talked about restricting SharePoint access to certain things.
Any specific topics that you would like us to cover? We have a bit of a sense of what we want to do for the next month or two, but is there anything specific that you'd like to cover?
The same example that I gave you earlier. So when we have multiple clients as a company, and we have proper Azure directories where you have backlogs, you have user stories and everything. So can we point Copilot there directly?
As DevOps. Yes, you
Yes.
can.
And show an example
Yes,
of
but-
how we
yes,
can
but-
focus on that and just, so for example, if my boss wants to know how many features have we completed and how many are remaining, he doesn't have to wait for me to respond. He can just query that and get something like that.
The answer is yes, but there is an extension for Azure DevOps which does give access to work items like a document, but it won't necessarily say, "Hey, give me a summary. Tell me how many points has my team achieved." That is something, that's not within the scope of Copilot. There are potentially other tools that could.
One of the but options is you could use Copilot Studio and plugins, and then extend it that way, and then publish that out to M365. So what are the options? So well, that's maybe a topic for one of our days, is extending Copilot. With Copilot Studio, you can use all the connectors you have in the Power Platform, and there's specific ones for Copilot Studio as well, where you can say connect to DevOps, connect to a specific project in DevOps and a specific board, and then you make that available as a plugin. So when you go to M365 Copilot, I don't know if we can do that here, but you'll see at the bottom of your M365 Copilot, if you go in Teams, there's a little box that looks like 4 little squares. If you click on it, it'll bring up your plugins. And I think the default ones that are there now is the web plugin, but you can, your plugins you create will appear there. So, like if you do Copilot for sales, it'll appear there. You can actually have a plugin that says query DevOps. There we go. And you'll be able to do a DevOps, it'll actually do a query against DevOps. So that's very
that process would be quite awesome to actually do with you guys here.
Yeah, we can definitely
As a subject.
Yeah, topics and plugins, yeah.
Basically give it conversation topics to say, like, hey, if someone asks about, feature releases or requests or whatever,
Exactly.
you can go to this plugin,
Narrow it down.
tell it how to find that information. Same thing with like booking flights, like out of the box, M365 Copilot has no idea how to book a flight for you or even look up flight details. But you could build a flight plugin for like Air New Zealand, which can query its data and then say, hey, if someone asks about flights or travel or whatever, use this plugin to find the information.
Or you could use the humane AI pin.
Right. So one of the extensions we built recently for one of our customers, they have Dataverse, they've got Dynamics, and they extended Dataverse with specific entities that looked at vehicle servicing. But they weren't using field service. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but a couple of additional entities, and we actually expose the entities as a plugin. So when you go into Teams and you go to Copilot, you just go vehicle service plugin. You can say when was vehicle registration 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 last serviced, and it'll go and do the query against Dataverse and give you the response back in natural language. So you can extend, I think there's over 1,000 different connectors to everything, including Salesforce, Dropbox, everything. It's very cool.
Does Copilot save its queries actually? Because implement is security going to ask me around? Someone's going to try around.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure exactly where it stores its history. It doesn't use your queries for retraining, but it does store history of the questions you've asked in your history list. Where it physically stores, I don't know, but that's something we can ask and get you an answer for. There's the Queen of Copilot knows.
To also retain the info. That now includes as well.
Fantastic.
Your tenant is stored in a tenant is stored in, let's say, in the East, for example, with
Yes. Yep.
How to build a Glock here in the discovery.
tomorrow.
Just so, I mean, we're basically done. Just something that would be, I don't know if it's worthwhile adding. A lot of the all the prompting we did tonight was done in Copilot Studio, copilot.microsoft.com. Copilot Studio, my brain. When you do a query in a tool like ChatGPT, and I'm going to use ChatGPT example, it's going to more or less output what you ask it to do. When you're working with the Copilots inside the Microsoft Office applications, be sensitive to the fact that they are fine-tuned to provide output that is used in the context of that application. So if you ask it an intense question inside of OneNote, it's not going to give you a picture of a rabbit riding a white pony because that's not what that specific Copilot is fine-tuned for. So don't expect the Copilot to do things that it's not supposed to do in the context of the application. If you want that freedom, Copilot.microsoft.com is where you have the freedom to do whatever you want to and get any output you want to. And I find that with some of our clients that there's an expectation that they can do ChatGPT stuff inside of PowerPoint. And that doesn't make much sense really, because it's grounded in that data and in your tenant, and it's trying to generate text for PowerPoint and images for PowerPoint. It's not trying to generate the best butter chicken recipe without garlic.
To make a presentation about it.
But can make a presentation about it. That's all. That was my only piece.
Cool. All right. So you've also seen a great demonstration of how new Teams keeps me signed into multiple environments, and when I use Windows 11 to say do not disturb, it does. So I've quit Teams. All right. Yeah. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month. And we will post what we plan to present then. Cool.
Awesome. Cool.